So, welcome everybody. I'm Diane Schwirep, and we're about to have a conversation with the cute Melissa. And the subject is service. Um, I'm not really big on introductions. I can only talk about, which means I can't give you a biographical description of Melissa. What I can say is how she touched my life and why I invited her and how I got to know her. And I think the first time that I saw you was when Ankush interviewed you and you went live on his group. And I'm not sure if I saw you live. I'm not sure if it was a recording, but anyway, what I thought was, I want to meet this woman because she's candid. She doesn't mince her words. She's talking really honestly about her journey, about service, and the difficulties that you had in getting to where you are now. You are really humble about it. And I think your journey and your story is really valuable to share with as many people as possible. But not only for those of us who are pursuing or are coaches and want to become successful or want to share, in my case, who want to share this understanding, the inside out nature of life, but also because I believe that it has impacted your life. So it's had like a domino effect, not only on your business, but on how you interacted with your daughters, with your husband, with your son, and in life in general. So that's something I really want to touch upon also, if there is time. I also want to talk about the spiritual element about it, if you're game, Melissa. And ultimately, give space for people to ask you questions. Yeah. So that's what I know you've co-authored a book, All Tides. What's the name of the book, Melissa?
Oh, let me just reach over.
Brilliant. When All Boats Rise.
Yeah.
And you're in the process of writing another book?
I am. And the working title, I don't know if it's going to stay this way, is Service Warrior. I think I'm calling it A Prosperous Journey for the Working Coach.
Okay. So I'd like you to share with us, how long was it? How many years did it take you to get to where you are now? Your struggle. I think it's really important.
Yeah. My struggle. Yeah. Maybe if I had known about the 3P prior to this, the struggle would have been less a struggle. So before I answer that, can I just ask, is everybody a coach here? Paul? No? Sue, you're not? Okay. All right. Helen is and a Will. All right. So this is going to be fun also, Sue. Glad you're here. So the question is, when did I start this whole process with coaching and trying to grow my business? Is that the question?
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Yeah, more or less. Okay. So I started on my coaching path back in 1995. So that's a long time. And I didn't get really very far at all. And what happened for me was that I didn't know anything about service. I didn't understand about how to help somebody first and then create enough value and make enough impact in their life that they would want to work with me. I had no concept about that. So as a result, I just kept stumbling along. And I like to tell people that back in the mid-90s, when you would talk about limiting beliefs, they'd want to know what religion you were referring to. That was bizarre. And so I had a business partner. I called her my hobby partner because we couldn't make any money with coaching. We just didn't know how to do it. So I played around like that for a good almost 12 years. And that I can call it play now, but back then it was really struggling and not knowing why I couldn't create clients, had no idea. So finally in 2009, that's where I made the decision I was going to hire a coach. And I work with Steve Chandler, and I hired him back then. And I started really kind of excavating and looking closer at this concept of service. And I was really reluctant. I was the reluctant service warrior. I did not want to have anything to do with the concept. I thought it was a bad business idea. It seemed silly to give things before I got paid. I should get paid and then I should give things. It just didn't make any sense to me. So that was ongoing. And then finally I started to get some breakthroughs in understanding about what service meant. And that's when things started to change. And the cool thing is that it only started to change because I started to change. I had to grow up. I had to get in touch with being the person who could really help somebody first and then be willing to be paid. So it was a real reinvention of myself. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
I've heard this all before, but so when you said when you started to change is, and in what way? Because I've noticed that for me, the more I step into being myself and acknowledging who I am, the easier it is for me to put myself out there, if that makes any sense. What change did you see?
So that's what I love about this journey of stepping into service, is that everybody's going to have a different way of doing it. So Paul, your way is going to look different than Helen's, Sue's, Will's, Diane's, mine. And as you go along, you'll discover what that is. So for me, it wasn't, Diane, mine was different than yours. It really wasn't getting more in touch with who I was and being willing to be that authentic version of me. It was me really getting that it didn't matter how much I wanted to be a prosperous coach and be paid for my coaching. What mattered was my willingness to help someone. And prior to that, I hadn't been willing. I thought I had this impression of myself of being this expert and really great at what she did, and people should just want to work with me. So there was a real arrogance to who I was back then. And of course, I didn't know that. I just thought, come on, I want people to pay me because I'm good at what I do. So for me, it was very humbling, because it was really seeing it didn't matter what I wanted. What mattered was, could I make a difference? So I was very focused on selling my coaching and getting coaching clients and getting all this. That was irrelevant. What really mattered was there something I could do to help somebody, and would they allow me to help them? So it was really, I love this. I have a friend named Leslie Sand, and she's a really awesome coach. And we were having this conversation, and her description of my evolution was, I was like the Wicked Witch of the West in Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, where they threw the water on her. It's like, I'm melting. That was my ego. When All Boats Rise, I wrote about, I was like the Grinch. My heart grew 3 times its size. So however I describe it, it was more just a softening of who I was, and more of an awareness that power isn't the ability to get what I want. It's the depth of my ability to love. So that was that touches on that spiritual aspect. So for me, it was really about growing my heart. And, if I would have heard 10 years ago, if I would have heard myself utter those words, I would have flipped out. And also I would never be on a webinar, a Zoom call talking about service, because frankly, I didn't even know what that meant. Again, like I said, I thought it was a bad business idea.
Well,
if you all can relate.
Yeah, yes, totally, because when I started this journey, I thought I had to be the expert.
Mm.
I didn't think I was the expert, and I didn't want to be the expert. I mean, and I thought that for me to help people, then I had to be an expert. And my wanting to help others was almost blinding me. Then it became about money. How am I going to get someone as my client so I can get paid for what I do because I'm the expert, because I'm better, because I'm better than them, or because it was also arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think there is a similarity in what you said and what I said, stepping more into being close to who I am. I don't have to be the expert, and I don't have to be arrogant, and I can do it purely from a heart-centered place. And not worry about how I'm going to get paid and who am I going to help next. And nobody has to become my client, which has become central for me now. Just because I'm a coach or just because I connect with people, they don't have to become my clients. And people had to become my clients.
Yeah, yeah. So can I jump in and just make a comment?
Sure.
Cool. So one of the things that that I've actually learned from Three Principles, and I don't know if everybody's a Three Principles coach here. I'm not. I've been influenced by it. But one thing I learned was that, when all that arrogance and all that focus on me was all my massive insecurity. And so I can be kind and compassionate with myself that my insecurity showed up as puffing and better than and all that. Because we all come across people like that, whether they're coaches or they're not coaches. We run across people who are arrogant. That's massive insecurity at work. And so I can have a heck of a lot of compassion for them and for myself, as well as when people feel really vulnerable and less than and inferior. That's also another form of massive insecurity. So I just want to point that out. I used to be super embarrassed to even talk about how arrogant I was, but now it's kind of like, yeah, well, that was part of how I came about to where I got to today. So that was just, how I did it. And the other thing when it comes to service, you're absolutely right, Diane. Not being attached to getting somebody as a client, frankly, not being attached to getting something, meaning I need something, then the whole world opens up for me. And I also know that the highest form of service as a coach is for me to be in somebody's world and for them to pay me. Because what I've noticed is that when I'm in a paid relationship with somebody, and I learned this from my coach, Steve Chandler, when I'm in a paid relationship with somebody, the level of consciousness that I bring to the work and the level of consciousness they bring to the work is so elevated, it's so raised, that now it's not just a bunch of information and some chats and maybe some nice conversation and maybe I'll get some inspiration, but it's a real commitment on that individual's part to their own transformation and creating ROI, their rate of return on their investment. They're willing to really deliver for themselves. So I do know that money is a powerful part of service because of the world we live in. We live in a world where, if I put down money for a beautiful coat or a home or whatever, based on my level of investment really determines my relationship to it for a lot of things that I have in my life. That includes being coached. So I don't know what any of you think about that, but I think that's important just to put that out there, because they're not either or, they come together. But the needing something, that's where it starts to all go off the rails, because then it becomes about me getting versus me really making an impact. So I'm just going to cut it right there and just say, what do you guys think of that?
Yeah, what do you guys think of that?
I think they're possibly muted, maybe.
Yes, but if you want to say something, just raise your hands. I can see you, except for Will.
I think Sue wants to say something, because when you're smoking, that's like you've raised your hand. Sue, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to be honest, everything you said made sense. And I'm not a coach. I'm debating doing coaching training. I have kind of spoke to a few people with impact. So I've kind of tested the waters first before I go full in on doing it. I'm one of those that feels like, well, I've got to have a certificate to say that I could do this, and I've got to, and I'm like, but you know what? You're having a conversation with them. Yeah, you're a good listener. You have a whole lot of common sense. Isn't that all you need? And I was talking to a lady earlier. I'm not going to obviously mention name, and she's very low at the moment, very, very dark place. And I kind of said to her, you know what? Forget the principles for now. Go back to basics, to whatever you think occurs to you right now. And she cried because somebody had given her permission to let it all go. And I'm thinking, wow, and when we come off that call, she was fine. She was fine, and I was saying to her, you know what? If you get out of bed, that's an achievement. Be nice to yourself. Pat yourself on the back. She goes, but I only got out of bed. No, but that's something that you couldn't do before.
Yeah. Well, what I love what you're saying is that, your conversation with her was in total service and like you said, making an impact. And I remember getting hung up on certification also. And I had been coaching for probably about 12 years. And I made up the story that nobody had hired me because I wasn't certified. So I made that story up, and I was positive that was the reason. And I went and got a certification from the place that I considered was the best possible place, that nobody could refute my qualifications, put the money in, put all the time in. And then when I was done, I had a certification and nobody hired me.
Wow.
I hear you. And and I'm not against coaching certifications. For some people, it's a really good approach, but then is it in service to me to do that? And why am I doing it? And what do I think it's going to get me? Because ultimately, what I know is that what's really going to build my business is my ability to profoundly serve and be in the lead and help people get to the place where either I'm going to continue to work with them or I'm not, but a difference has been made.
Yeah.
So I appreciate I appreciate what you shared. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else wants to add something? Yeah, Helen.
Hey, Helen.
I didn't unmute you. Hang on. Okay.
Hi.
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 Hi, how are you, Melissa?
I'm great.
Hi, everyone. No, it's just I've heard varying ideas about the paid relationship and the different level of consciousness or commitment.
Mm.
And I've heard people who and I can't think who right now, probably wouldn't say anyway, but people who, you know, I respect their opinions and saying that they have obtained great value and been extremely committed to something to which they've paid very little and not necessarily gained all that much from something from which they paid a lot. But I do, and I've been told by coaches, and when I myself am in a paid coaching relationship where I'm coaching someone for money rather than paying them just, coaching them unpaid, I feel that my commitment is, I don't know, I'm not clear that my commitment is massively up leveled in some way because I'm now receiving financial payment or financial gain. Before I became a coach that was getting paid by people, not that many, but some, I made differences for people in their lives and wasn't paid any money at all. But possibly there's a difference with how they turn up. But you can't say that for. I find it difficult to put that there as a blanket statement that that in all cases you will see a massive difference in their level of commitment and what they gain out of it and how you show up necessarily. I don't think it's as clear cut as that. Although that's and I'm still maybe I'm still not when in the years to come more and more paid clients, maybe I will look differently on that. But I'm hearing varying things.
Yeah, you might. So what I think I'm hearing you say is that you don't see a connection between people paying and their level of commitment to transform.
Yeah, I don't think it's always so, or maybe it's more from my point of view.
Could be. And when you say your point of view, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, me as a coach, that I'm not going to become become a better coach or become more committed to the coaching relationship because I'm being paid.
Oh, okay. Well, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
And so I believe what you're telling me. I do know for myself that, so for instance, this morning, I had a second conversation with a prospective client.
Mm-hmm.
And I really helped. And so at that point, towards the end of our call, I asked her if there was anything else I could do. And she said, no, this was great. And that's what I do. At this point in our relationship, I'm not going to say, well, I can help you more. Let me help you. And so I didn't. And I said, okay. So I know that if I would have said to her, I can really help you. And if you can't afford me, let me coach you for free. And I'll give you free 10 sessions. I know for me that I feel different. I bring a different level of consciousness if somebody hires me and they pay me for those 10 sessions, because my commitment to them is elevated, because I'm in the world of being a paid professional coach.
Yeah.
I'm not a volunteer coach. Being a volunteer coach is awesome. There's tons of people who do that. And there's lots of value to doing that. But the thing that I'm up to in my life is to be a paid professional working coach.
Yeah.
And so I want to look at what I'm doing to see if it's in service to that thing that I say that I'm up to. And again, it really is, what's your intention, what's your focus? But that's how it is for me.
Yes.
So I don't know if that helps at all, but that's me.
What's your intention and what's your focus, and does make a difference. And if you're aware while you said, okay, let me do this for nothing, let me coach you for 10 weeks or whatever, 10 sessions for nothing, and your main intention is definitely to make a go of this and get paid, and you've done all of this study and whatever qualifications or all of this experience you've had of becoming an excellent coach, that it would make a big difference to you after, say, session 3, 4, 5, 6, if you were not being paid at all.
Yeah.
I hear you.
Were you going to say something, Melissa?
No.
Because I'd like to add something here, because we're talking about certificates. We're talking about being an excellent coach. We're talking about the level of consciousness that we bring to a coaching experience or a coaching conversation. And for me, I really had difficulty with this idea of becoming an excellent coach or a good coach, and because I don't know, if I'm really honest, I don't know what is a good coach and who is a good coach and what am I bringing to the conversation. And ultimately, before I had built up this, you said something before me, I had built myself this story as well about a certificate, saying that if I don't fit this bill, then I'm not a good coach. And now I don't know what kind of coach I am. I can't say that. But what interests me is, where am I meeting the individual? How am I going to serve and help? Irrespective of whether I have a certificate or not. But I don't. So what I bring to the conversation, if someone wants to have a conversation, one, I really want to see what's important to me. What is the willingness? What is the disposition of the person who's approached me? What do they want? What do they want in their life? Do they want it to transform? What changes do they want to see in their lives? And I'm very well aware of that. I can't get into someone's brain and transform them. Now, if they spend time with me and they happen to have impact and transformation, I think it's because I'm being me, and I'm bringing myself into it. I'm having a conversation with the understanding that I have now. Oh, sorry. Did you hear it now? I was pressed on the tab. With the understanding that I have now of the 3P, or with my grounding. And the deeper my grounding, the better conversations I can have. So that's tied in with is someone going to pay me for being impacted? And ultimately, that's what it boils down to. Have I made a difference in their life to say for the person to say, hang on, I spent some time with Diane, I've spent some time with Helen, I've spent some time with Sue, I've spent some time with Paul, and I feel a difference in my life. I wonder what we would like if I paid them. And you touched upon something else. I mentioned 3 things. I've forgotten.
That happens.
Yeah. But I don't know if what I'm bringing now on the table here amongst us makes sense. Because I realized, and I keep saying this, and I keep saying this till I go blue in the face. on that online program with us, 20 people, I know that we impacted one another. I know that I impacted you guys. I know that I did. Was I being principled? Was I really grounded? No, I was showing up as me.
It sounds like it's part of your grounding.
Yeah. So is it the certificate that helps? Is it my belief in the certificate that helps? Do I have an issue with receiving money? With the connection that I have? What is money to me? How do I see money? Money is neutral, but if I have this belief which is kind of tainted about money, then I'm not going to want to ask for money. I don't know if this is making sense. I'm addressing you, Helen, because I heard some. I don't know if I've heard something. So if you're in disagreement or it doesn't resonate, please raise your hand and talk about it.
Well, can I pop in?
Please.
Okay. So I'm just going to make a guess or an assumption that grounding in the 3P world is your understanding, your own experience of life through that lens, through how it really works, right? So your certification is your grounding. And all coaches that are really good at what they do, they're willing to, as I was always told, take your own medicine, Melissa. So instead of being somebody who's constantly giving people advice, but I don't live it, it makes the work that I want to do even harder, because that's what's beautiful about our profession, is that if we're not willing to do something we ask a client to do, it's just going to fall flat. So if I'm asking somebody to be forgiving of themselves and gentle with themselves, but I turn around and give myself a beat down, it's just not gonna work. I'm not gonna be, I can't relate to it. So being great as a coach is, for me, my willingness to continue to grow myself, take my own medicine, deepen my understanding of service, which for me includes being paid, because I know the value that somebody gives themselves when they pay for something. And because that's who I am, I'm a person who gets paid for her work. And so in my world, that's service. Service is also not needing somebody to work with me. So that's just some thoughts on what you said.
Thank you. You said something which I want to tie in what Sue said. Sue said, yeah, it totally makes sense. I would feel that I'm cheating a person by charging. And I sense that this is an issue for most coaches. I know. Let me just slow down a little bit. You said something just now, Melissa, about deepening my understanding of service. And service does tie in with charging money. I'm giving you a service and I'm being paid for the service that I'm giving. So that sentence, I would feel that I'm cheating a person by charging, is a bit counterintuitive. What do you think, Melissa? I mean, if I'm bringing myself to a coaching conversation, to a coaching relationship, and I'm willing to continually grow, which as an individual, growing myself and having a coach and understanding how coaching has impacted my life, because it has in a big way, then why wouldn't I charge? And why wouldn't I have the liberty, or not to put parameters around the charging, in the sense that I can charge what I want. I'm not fixed to charging Melissa, for want of a, I can charge you one price depending on your paying capabilities. And I can charge Charlie another price. Nobody's tying me down to having a fixed price. Don't you think that service is tied in, really closely tied in with money, which is where you're coming from, I think?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Let's take service and put in the context of, I used to practice law years ago. And so let's put it in the context of that. So I worked at a law firm, and I showed up every day and I did the work and I served the clients that were brought in by this particular law firm. And I accepted money. But I never thought it was wrong for me to accept the money. And I was helping that client that came in with a divorce case or a tax matter, and I was making their life better. And in that context, there was nothing wrong or bad or less service-oriented to be paid. But now I take my service, which is as much service, and in my estimation now, even worth more, and I put it into a coaching model and I say, well, to be paid, that's not okay. And I wonder what's the difference. You know, the attorney, say it's a criminal defense attorney, is helping somebody fight a case and potentially avoiding a jail sentence. And a coach is helping someone live this one precious gift they're given, which is their life, at a different level. So why is one yes, accept money, and the other is no? So the only thing going on here is what I bring to, for me anyway, my belief about money and my ability to ask for it, and maybe what it means about me if I ask to be paid, and what it means about me if I tell you I won't work with you because you're not paying me. So it all comes back to me anyway. Mm-hmm. So for me, I'm not serving somebody if I just keep giving free sessions. I'm truly not. Because I've seen the difference in me. So for instance, I've been coached for a very long time with Steve Chandler. We had a session this morning. And because I pay to be coached by him, last night I'm like, what the heck am I gonna work on? Because I hadn't even, I'm kind of like, what am I gonna do? Now, if I hadn't paid Steve, more than likely I would have sent him a text and I would have said, hey, Steve, I don't have anything to work on. Thanks for your time. And maybe when life gets crappy, I'll give you a call and we'll have a session. But no, I've made an investment and it's fairly significant. And you betcha I'm going to find something to talk about that is going to help me. So last night, I put a pad of paper and a pen next to my bed, and I go, I know I'm going to wake up at 4 a.m. and it's going to hit me what it is that I need to talk about. And sure enough, it did. And I wrote it down. And also, because I've got this paid relationship with him, I have this particular mindset. And it really, really helps me. And what it is, it's the acronym HOW. And it stands for honest, open, and willing. And I always make sure I'm in that mindset when I show up to be coached. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm going to be open. And if there's something he's going to recommend or something I see, I will be willing to go and do it. So look at who I'm being because I've made that investment. And on the flip side, as a coach, when somebody's paid me, it's my responsibility to be service-oriented and loving, but I find that they've paid for a completely different relationship with me than any other relationship they have with someone else. It's not the relationship they have with their partner or their best girlfriend or their mom or their sibling or whatever. They're paying for me to be as honest and loving as I can be and share with them things that, frankly, I know my spouse won't necessarily tell me unless I'm really like, Brian, tell me what you see, and I promise I won't offend myself or attack you. You know, I mean, it's just different. So that's my experience. And I will say things to my coach that, God forbid, I don't even want to hear myself. But I'm willing to do it because I know I've got some wrong thinking or something's going on, and he's going to share something I simply didn't see. And I'm going to do the same for the people who pay me eventually. And I show up like that those first couple of sessions when I have a prospective client, because I want them to know what it's like to have this relationship with me. And I'm going to develop that relationship. So I don't know if any of this helps you guys. Paul, I'm curious. Your night looks so beautiful out there. Looks a little chilly, but it looks good. I'm curious, any thoughts you have or what you think about this?
Let me unmute you, Paul.
Yeah, I just want to hear from you. Or maybe you're convinced that not getting paid is a good thing, and that's fine too.
Do you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, and thank you for all this stuff. I'm really glad I joined this, and thank you, Diane. We are following along in the same group and so on. I'm reading Steve Chandler for the moment, some of his books, and I'm still in the process of his type of getting clients, so to say. I come from sales. I come from advertising. I'm the chairman of the Danish NLP Association. So I still have something about beliefs and so on I'm working on. But this 3P angle on things, that's really not an angle, but it's really given me a lot, really. So this before I would say I have to, if I was going to sell anything, I had to be 100% convinced that it was valuable to the people I would sell it. I've had jobs for one day because I found out that what I was saying wasn't valuable enough, and I've 7 years, you know. So that kind of I'm still into the selling technique kind of world, and I'm getting out of this. Have been for the last 1 year or so.
Yeah.
But I'm still learning this Steve Chandler approach, and his really living proof that it works, and I'm working on it too. So thank you very much, Melissa, for clarifying this this live talk. Yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank
I
you.
really like that. The world of Steve Chandler, you know, Steve talks about the difference between serving and pleasing. Well, I was really not, when I first started off, in the pleasing category. I was in the pushing category. That also doesn't work, by the way. So the fact that you're moving from sales into service, good for you. It's a mind shift. That's all it is. but yeah, he's got a lot of great books. He's got, I think it's 37 Ways to Create Clients. That's a really good one. Something interesting, because you're from the 3P world, everybody. I was in La Conner, Washington in February, and I got to be in the presence of Linda and George Pransky and Barb Patterson. They're all awesome. And there was, at one point, there was something that George said that I thought was really funny. And it was the one and only time money came up during this 4-day professional conference. And I actually loved it because I love talking about money, because it's something that's sticky and scary and prickly for a lot of people, and they freak out and they want to run from it. And so George said, this was awesome. He said, you know, I had this one client who was in some corporation, and I'm paraphrasing here, guys, so, you know, bear with me. So George noticed he had a coaching conversation with this guy that he was just off. And that can happen with anybody because we're human, right? And he was just off. And he mentioned to his client, he said, you know, I realized this conversation, I was pretty off. And I wasn't at my best. So I just wanted to say that. And the client said to George, oh, so can I get a discount? And I'm sitting here, I'm like, I can't wait to hear what this man has to say, because in the 3P world, you know, the money isn't really discussed. That's been my assumption. And George looked at the guy and he said, you know, I'd be willing to give you a discount if during those sessions that I'm really just killing it, I get a bonus. And yeah, I'm like this, you know, I'm like, that's it. That's it exactly. Can I tell one more money story, Diane?
Oh, please go ahead.
Okay, this is for you, Helen. This is awesome. So this is a story Steve Chandler told me, and I thought it was really brilliant in terms of how it highlights people's relationship to paying money for goods or services. And again, I'm paraphrasing, so I'm sure I've got the story not completely right, but here it goes. This is the intention of it. So Steve says that back in the day, he showed up at a presentation he was doing for a group of leaders inside of an organization. And he was really excited, and, you know, it's a Fortune 500 company, and he's talking, say he's doing his typical owner-victim talk, which he's so brilliant at. And the leaders are super excited, and they're thinking, this guy's going to change it up for us. They're super excited. So Steve's at the back of the room, and he's finishing up the presentation, and the CEO or the president, whoever the head honcho was at the front, and he's busily taking notes. And so at the end, everybody's really pumped up, and the president says to Steve, so what is this going to cost? So Steve's just like, this is great. I'm going to get this business. And Steve goes, let's just say it's $3,000. And so the guy goes, per person? And Steve goes, no, like for the whole workshop. And the guy goes, okay. Steve said, everybody looked at him like, well, what, did we just buy bologna? I mean, what just went down? And everybody was like, Versus in that world, it's $3,000 a person. So how are they bringing themselves to the bologna workshop? I think that's fascinating. Yeah. I don't know what you all think, but I love that story because it reflects how we value something. So I'm pumped, Diane, we're talking about money when it comes to service, because it's kind of like, let's talk about money. Right? Like, that's not a good thing. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about the spiritual aspect of service. Psst.
Money.
Hey, what was that Pink Floyd song? Money.
Yeah,
It's a hit.
It's the blast.
money is spiritual.
It is.
Yeah.
I think.
All right. So yeah. So
Yeah,
I don't know what you all think, but you take it away, lady. It's your webinar.
I'm gonna mute you for recording purposes. Sorry, Helen.
Got it. Yeah.
No, not you, Melissa. I was struck by something that Paul said, and that is getting clients.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's either my own allergy, my own perception, because I don't believe that we get clients. We create clients. I'm not sure if I'm you know, that's one thing that struck me. I'm a bit lost. A lot has been said. We're talking about money. We're talking about service.
Yeah. Well, I got something to say about that, because I heard the same thing. Go Paul. I heard the same thing, getting clients. So here's what I can tell you for myself, Paul, when I think about getting clients. My perspective has shifted to me. I need to get a client. Versus, what can I do to help this person so their life gets better? Because I know that taking that approach starts making a difference for someone, and it's the easiest path of least resistance to creating a client. But when I'm trying to get a client, I'm up in my head, I'm caught up in my thinking, I'm struggling. That's when I would struggle, when I would think about getting a client. So I've got another story, and Diane, I'll tell in a second. Go ahead.
No, Paul just put his hand up, and I put my finger back up to just, I'd like to add something that keeps coming up for me in my shift with getting clients, and then we'll go back to your story if you want that, if that's okay. Before, for me, I remember those 3 stages you spoke about when I started this my journey on coaching and getting clients and whatnot. It's shifted. I don't think of getting clients, because in my world now, Sue can call me tomorrow morning and say, Diane, I want someone to talk to. Can you help me? She does not have to become my client. She can just call me and say, listen, I really need someone to talk to. Now, if she goes away from the conversation and then somehow says, maybe I could consider coaching, maybe I could, but they don't have to. So getting a client to me it's just out. I've obliterated it from my vocabulary. I'm looking at it now as I will help anyone. I'm planting seeds constantly. I'm planting seeds everywhere I go. I'm serving people. Is it creating me clients right now? As it, and maybe it's part of my frustration. As yet, no, I have one paying client. But this one paying client keeps coming back, keeps renewing. And I don't know if I'm going on a tangent here, but I want to serve, I want to help. And it takes time. And I'm finding my way of how showing people, okay, what are you going to get from me? What are you going to be paying for? What can I offer you? And that's still taking shape for me. So I think that's part of not just deepening my understanding of service, but also deepening my understanding of what I can offer the world as Diane, as my own particular service, which is only unique to me. I don't know if that's making any sense, but this is always me questioning what I say in a webinar, being very aware that's going to go on YouTube, people are going to listen to, and that's my insecurity showing up.
Yeah, well, you and me both. So I love hearing what you're saying. And it's your evolution. So you've got to do what feels like the thing to do. You know the way in. Like Paul knows, you know, for him now at this point, it's getting clients. And maybe he's heard something in this webinar that helps him shift it slightly. I don't know. But we all come to our own understanding when we're ready to see it.
For sure.
And so for me, you know, I want to help too. But like I said earlier with Helen is, you know, what I'm up to is to be a working coach who gets paid for what she does. So I will help, but then at some point I know that the best help is to have a paid relationship.
Yeah.
And I've just come to know that for myself. And everybody's going to arrive at that at some point, however they arrive at that. And if they eventually don't arrive at that and they don't live off a trust fund, then they're probably going to go find some other means of employment. Possibly.
Yeah.
You know?
That's shifted for me as well. I'm no longer viewing my services as someone who doesn't need to get paid for what I do.
Yeah.
That has really shifted. I mean, I'm giving you a service, and if I'm giving you a good service, then why not? I get paid for it, period. You wanted to share a story, and I'm still thinking, but I want to do what's relevant and what feels right now. I'm really curious about how it impacted your life, how service impacted your life and how it had a ripple effect on your family and on yourself, Melissa.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is, unless you want to go back to the story you want to tell until I
can't remember it, to be honest.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay. So when I decided that I wanted to be this professional coach who was paid for her work, and I got on the service path, I was relentless. You know, it was like a dog with a bone. I was going to figure this thing out. I was going to make it happen. I was going to stop futzing around with this whole thing, and I was going to get it.
Mm.
So, you know, I wrestled around with the anaconda, you know, I'm doing all these things, and eventually get to this place where I'm getting it more and more. You know, I'm in this place where I can see how service works, and I'm living it more than I am using it as a strategy or a tool. Because that's part of also this process. You know, at first it's this kind of manipulative, strange tool, and I'm doing these things, and then it becomes more a way of living. Well, what was really fascinating was that, you know, if you looked at my two lives, if you looked at my professional life, I was living service. And if you looked at my personal life, now not all of my personal life, but some of my relationships in it, I wasn't in any way congruent with what I was doing in my professional life, because that was time for later. You know, I had this thing that I was up to that I was going to create. So then I joined a group of coaches with the amazing Steve Chandler. And the premise was this, that we could participate in this group provided we were willing to lay all of our cards on the table professionally and personally. Because again, the premise was that when your personal life is wonderful, when it's prospering, so does your professional life. And at this point, I had worked long enough with Steve that I knew that anything that he told me was true. Because the me before, Steve would tell me things and I was very skeptical. Maybe that's the lawyer in us, Helen. I was very skeptical. I wasn't going to go along with what he said. And he would always tell me it was a healthy skepticism. I thought maybe he was just being incredibly kind. But so I was very skeptical for many, many years. And anything he would tell me, I would have to go test it out because I wasn't going to buy it hook, line, and sinker. Just wasn't, you know. You know, other people would be like, oh, service and yes, and it resonates in my heart. And I'd be like, Urgh. So I had coached with him long enough and been in his world enough, and he had been in mine, that when he proposed that if my personal life was prospering, my professional life would too, I was just like, oh God, I got to go do this. Whatever's not working in my personal life, I'm willing to step up. Here's where taking your own medicine comes into play. Yeah. I'm willing to step up and face this, like whatever this is. And I pretty much had a good idea as to what those relationships were. And that was the beginning of a different, you know, if service is about growing who you're being, and then you can more powerfully serve and impact and help, this was a huge, you know, leap in my own ability to serve. So I was willing to look at my relationship. I've been married for almost 33 years, I think. I was willing to look at that because that wasn't ideal. I was willing to look at some relationships, some close relationships in my family of origin. And to start to look at, okay, so what stories have I made up that have gotten in my way of really being connected and loving with these people, with my spouse, with my sibling, with anybody? And so making those shifts created a lot, you know, again, the Grinch, instead of the heart being 3 times its size, now is about 6. And so, Sue, I love the yawn. I know this is a barn burner, but that's what happened for me. And so I began to change, and then that changed who I was being naturally. So when you talk about coming back to your authentic self, maybe we have the reverse going on here, Diane. You know, maybe what's occurring is I'm learning what you stepped into. So that's the other cool thing, guys. You know your own evolution, right? You know what's next, what's next, what's next, what's next. It's not the supposed expert coach, it's you. So is that what you're referring to? Yeah.
This is my own discovery. The more I'm stepping into being me, the more powerful I become as a coach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's stepping into being love. I mean, because that's what we are.
Yeah, exactly. So this brings us to the quote of Nikki and to the spiritual side, which is, I think, but you just have to excuse me because I can't paraphrase it. Which brings it full circle, I imagine, because ultimately my journey with coaching and my understanding of it and my insight of it, I can't find it, is that every time I'm coaching and every time I'm entering a conversation, I'm in search, and who I'm really finding is myself. So I know it's not really clear for me, but I had this realization some time ago, and I said, so why is coaching so important to me, apart from the fact that I have this deep desire to impact, to change the world. I'm crazy enough to believe that I can change the world. And then somewhere along the line, I thought to myself, then when I'm in a coaching conversation, what's happening? Who's benefiting from it the most? The receiver or the giver? I think it works both ways.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can see a difference to the Diane that you met some months ago in our first webinars, but it's not quite so clear. But I don't care anymore that it's not clear. It will get clearer along the way.
That's right.
I want to read what Nikki says about service, and something that she said at one point, we are service. And I asked her privately, what do you mean? And this is what she said. We are God. The one and only thing that prevents us from serving, from knowing that we are God, is that we believe we are not. We'll always truly serve when we remember we are God. That's our one and only job here on earth. Yep, we get caught up in bullshit, and then we stop serving and start to try and find ways of feeling better or being better. That's not service. And anything that comes out of that isn't service either, because when we forget that we are God, we are not realizing that everyone else is too. Which then something else that occurred to me. So if I come into a coaching conversation thinking that I'm an expert from a 3P perspective, then I'm under the assumption that the person who's with me doesn't have wisdom. And the relationship isn't balanced if I come with that in mind. And now we've gone all quiet, and I'm thinking to myself, Diane's talking a lot of shite. So, yeah, I mean, I'm wondering what you guys think. And I'm also aware that Paul had his finger up before, and I didn't, and you wanted to say something, so I'd like to. No? Okay, no. So, yeah. So, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to what I said. If you have any questions for our guests today. Well, you're all my guests.
Well, can I just say something? I liked what Poul said about feeling that he had something of value to sell. Okay, ideally we're not selling, exactly in the normal kind of very commercial way that you're selling whatever. But I liked what he said. There's something, if you know you've got something of value to sell, then you definitely are happy that someone would pay for that, you know. And I think a lot of early coaches, and I don't exclude myself at all, are not as sure as they maybe could be of the value of their coaching. And that it is that coaching is extremely valuable and so worthwhile and so beneficial for both, as you say, very often for the coach and for the coachee. I mean, nobody ever stops learning and growing, and I learn from every single person I encounter and every person I speak to. And I think the more you coach, the more you grow as a coach, whatever that means. I think being a more experienced coach, possibly, okay, this is all just language and it's not all that easy to put into words, but what we human beings use is language. We become a more experienced coach. Might be somebody more value to somebody who's looking to achieve a certain outcome or lost or whatever they are looking for from that coaching. That if you go to somebody, a more experienced coach, not guaranteed, but I think you grow as you get experience. I'm not saying that you then turn into some kind of an expert. I'm not saying that therefore you have more innate wisdom than any person that you come along to coach. But I think you have to be aware of the value of coaching if you do want to, as Melissa describes, become somebody who's making their living as a coach. Otherwise, there will be no coaching, no people who are actually able to make a living from coaching, and that doesn't make sense to me, because I think it's a massively worthwhile career and very beneficial to, and has been very beneficial to me personally, and as you said, to you, Dan. And I think it's very worthwhile pursuing that, and there is real benefit to be achieved from coaches and coachees. And knowing that and being sure of that it is of a benefit to somebody providing that service, and that it is something that you can charge for. And I've paid for very many times over and over myself, and I'm continuing to do so. When it comes to talking about God, I mean, I think we need a whole new Zoom call for that, because there's an awful lot about what Nikki was saying there. I can start talking about non-duality and our true nature, and whether we want to turn up more as our true authentic selves, or how should we turn up to in a coaching relationship. And as Melissa says, it is all our own individual journey. And you're talking about ego, there's nothing bad about ego. We all have one, but it's a big conversation when you start talking about, am I turning up more as me, or am I turning up less as me and more as part of the oneness of all, rather than turning up as more authentically as me. Maybe on my Facebook page, or in a group, or in an audio, or on a webinar like this, or a podcast. Maybe then, I don't know. But I think when you're for me, it's personal. When I'm coaching, I'm kind of less me and less whatever my small person, and more of a more universally present, as much as I can, loving, listening presence. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. I'm more aware of the divine within me, and whatever the divine is, and the divine in that other person, and less aware of the separateness of all of us. But that's a very big conversation.
Yeah. You're muted, Diane.
Yes, and we don't have the time to go there. It's nearly time to end this conversation. But I just wanted to draw it in as something, as planting a seed. That's it. Not to have a. But I'm also questioning the benefits of coaching. Is coaching beneficial to everybody? I'm not sure about that.
Like everybody in the world?
Okay, yeah, I mean that's really huge. I'm questioning that. Is coaching? It was definitely beneficial to me, and I looked for it and I asked for it and I wanted it. But is it beneficial for everyone? I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Well,
those who come to seek it out, with an open heart and an open mind, and depending on whether I think it can be the right person at the right time as well. And I know of people who had very bad experiences of coaching or being coached, and they were put off the whole idea of having a coach and thought that coaching was just a load of nonsense. But I think on average, I've heard more that more beneficial experiences for people. But I do question sometimes, but it might be a bit of my own insecurity. If you go out there trying to make a business of coaching and you actually don't believe that coaching is beneficial, you're not going to succeed as a coach. As a paid.
I didn't say that.
No.
I said is coaching. I believe it's beneficial, of course.
Yes.
But is it beneficial for everyone?
For everyone. Yeah.
I think there are people there are some people who are happily sailing along through life and have no questions, and that's fine. I'm interested in what Melissa has to say about this. I mean, how long have you been successful now? What is your feeling about the benefits of coaching and service? I mean, you can talk.
Well, I think it wraps into what you said and what Helen said in terms of, there's two silos to coaching. There's a coach, your skill set at coaching, which is you're being in the game of coaching and continuing to work your craft. There's your own development as an individual. There's a lot that comes into play over here. And this is something that can continue to grow. So there's that aspect to it. And then there's the aspect of serving to create a viable, thriving coaching practice. So there's two silos to coaching, really. So if I'm trying to serve and I don't believe that my coaching is valuable, then I've got some work over here to do. So for me, I had done that work. I just didn't know this piece, which this was quite the experience for me over here. Thank goodness I wasn't trying to get this one too. So I've got to stay in the game and keep coaching and keep developing my craft, and then at some point own the fact that my coaching is valuable. Because if I have to keep proving it and proving it and proving it to myself, what I'm missing is giving myself the reward, like owning and claiming my value as a coach. So definitely that has to be in play. That has to occur. And then the question of, does coaching benefit everybody? I don't care. I really don't. What I care is that the person who I'm talking to, can I help them see something? I want to help them. It doesn't really matter to me if it benefits people. It just matters to me if it's benefiting the person I'm having the conversation with. That matters to me. Yeah. Because my experience is that one thing is invaluable for everybody. And Diane, I totally get it. There's people out there that are walking around and they seem to be fine. I mean, I tell you, I've met people and I thought, boy, they don't really know what's going on. And then if I just shut up for a minute and listen to them, I realize they know things I don't even know. So who am I to say, maybe they need to coach me. I don't know. So yeah, I'm not curious about the question if it benefits everybody. I just care if it's helping the person I'm with. Yeah. So that's my 2 cents. So yeah, that's it. And we're at our time, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate hanging out with everybody and Paul, you standing outside and all your comments. It's been awesome.
Yeah, it has. And yeah, I really, and for me, these webinars and this is also, it's also so beneficial for everyone, and it's helping me a lot also in my growth. So I really appreciate it when people actually accept my invitations to be my guest on a webinar. I really enjoy them, and I really sincerely hope that this is also beneficial. The word beneficial to you guys.
Yeah.
So I think we can end it here. Unless you have any more questions for Melissa or for myself, or maybe you want to talk about how they can find you, Melissa. Or
Sure. You can locate me online, and my website is melissafordcoaching.com. And my email is the same, melissa@melissafordcoaching.com. And feel free, you can email me, and if you have any questions from this, go ahead and shoot them to me, or in the future if you do. And I just want to say thanks for having me, and it was beneficial to me.
Okay, then we'll end on this note.
All right, guys.
Thank you very much.
Lovely seeing you.
Okay.
You too. Nice meeting you all. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Melissa. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Sue.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Paul. Bye, Helen. Bye, Melissa.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye, guys. Oh, here we are. And Paul's there.